Hey everybody, I'm Lon Stroshine, former public company executive turned lifestyle engineer. In 2022, I walked away from my job as a public company executive. I left without a safety net, without another job, without a backlog of clients, or without a resume. But I left anyway. I left because I knew the best days of my life were right in front of me, and they weren't going to be lived where I was standing. Since then, I've launched a best-selling book, coached thousands of elite performers around the world, hosted a top-rated podcast, moved my family across the country, and created a movement that has inspired the change in 1,000 lives. Look, if you're here, it's not an accident or an algorithm. It's you. If you've reached the top of your game and you feel stuck, if you'd trade what you have but don't know what you'd trade it for, then buckle up. This podcast is for you. I'm glad you're here. Let's get started. I'm going to see all of you along the Normal 40 Highway. Welcome back to another episode of Normal 40, the podcast. I've got to tell you, this podcast, if you've been following along, this is, I believe, the 60th podcast episode I've recorded. And this one is different. This one hit me different. It landed with me different. And it didn't land with me so different when I was recording it as it landed with me when I went back and re-listened to it. And so you're in for a real treat when you meet my friend, Brandon Meyer. Brandon has cerebral palsy, and he's a dude who reached out to me not all that long ago and just asked for a ramble. And I knew within minutes that this dude is really special. He's inspiring. He's articulate. He's got a story, and he's got a bigger dream that he's getting ready to chase. And so I asked him kind of on a whim, I said, hey, would you ever want to be part of a podcast? And he said, yes. And I said, would you ever want to be part of my podcast? And he said, yes. And a few months later, we showed up and we hit record. And that was just a couple months ago. As I was preparing this podcast, what I normally do is I go for a long walk. I re-listen to the raw product. And then I work with Joan and we create kind of what we want this product to be, what we want this episode to be. And we do very little editing. And I'll assure you, as you go through this podcast, it will be apparent that an editor's burden isn't really taken into consideration because I want it to be raw. I want it to be real. I want it to be authentic. And I want to learn right along with you. When I listened to it on my walk, though, there was a couple stories that came out that I felt like I needed more. I felt like I needed another layer. One of them is a story that he shared about his brother Houston, a story from third grade. When Brandon was a third grader who's got the obvious outward signs of cerebral palsy, where movement is a challenge, where leg braces are a part of his normal day, and he was being picked on. And his twin brother, Houston, got word of it and wasn't having it. And he showed up. He showed up for Brandon, and he did what brothers do. He did what good brothers do. And I wanted the opportunity to have Houston tell his side of the story. So at the end of the podcast, in what is going to feel really random because it was, I'm going to put into the end of the podcast my conversation with Houston, because what we did when I called Brandon and I said, hey, I want to talk to Houston, we called him immediately, and he was in a backhoe and he was doing work for a project that had a deadline. And he was there working with their dad. Their dad's name is Rod. And we pulled him out of a backhoe to have a conversation with us. So you'll hear all that, but it's raw, it's real, authentic, and it's unrehearsed. And I wanted you to hear it. Two other things jumped out at me. One was a story that Brandon shared about his dad, about his parents, really, and about what it was like for him the day he left home. The kid who always needed somebody to be helping him through so many avenues of life. And he goes off to college, and then he goes off and he moves from his home in Missouri to Denver to Colorado. And what that was, he talked about what it was like from his chair driving away from home. And I wanted to know what it was like from Rod's chair, his dad's chair. And so while I had him, I asked him. And standing in what I can only imagine is a dirty, muddy ditch, wondering why the hell he's talking to some guy from the internet that Brandon hooked him up with to share a story. That story, he shares his story about what he was feeling when Brandon drove away. And I just, thought I should include it here. And the last thing is, we're going to break this podcast into two. It's that good on one hand and that long on the other. It's incredible. So know that when we get to the end, it's going to feel like we're leaving you a little bit, and we are, but there's a whole nother hour to come, and you're going to get to enjoy that. And in between, you might hear some guys playing guitar. One of the things that Brandon told me, as someone who has cerebral palsy, it always affects one side of their body, the right or the left. And for him, it affected his right side. So he's become left-handed. And so he's had to learn to play the guitar the other way. And it's very rare for somebody with cerebral palsy to be able to have the dexterity in a hand to play guitar, but he did it. It was one of the ways he's proving that he's just different, that he's willing to put in the work. And I dabble in guitar. And so I thought, well, why don't we just dabble together? We'll just cut a Zoom video. We'll share a couple of our favorite songs over the course of 35 or 40 minutes. And I didn't expect him to make the podcast, but I thought, well, we've got it. Let's use it. So you might hear us playing a little bit of guitar. Don't think it's weird. It's just a couple of guys playing some guitar over Zoom. And I hope you enjoy it. Turns out we've got a similar palette. All right, everyone. Thanks for being here. Thank you for being on the Normal 40 Highway. I'd appreciate it if you would share this episode with anybody who just needs an ounce of inspiration. And then I hope you connect with Brandon. All right, I'm going to drop you right into the podcast, just like I always do, right in the middle of the story, and we're just going to let it go from there. All right, I'm going to see all of you on the podcast.
Lon, good morning. How are you, sir?
Brandon, how are you doing, man?
I'm doing great. Good to see you.
Good to see you, man. Are you ready for this, dude?
I am. I'm so excited for this. I've been waiting for this for quite a while. So,
do you have any idea what kind of trouble you're getting yourself into?
No, I don't. That's the beauty of the unknown, right?
Man, well said. That is so well said. So I'm just going to warn you. There's a 90% chance that every word we're saying right now is part of the podcast, just so you know.
I love it. Raw, real, and authentic. Let's go. I'm all
That's
in.
how we roll, man. That is how.
Or that means no post-production. One of the two.
Well, it's a little bit of both. I can't lie. There's an element of ease to it for me too, and I can just warn you, hey, this is going live, and I don't have to do a bunch of post-production editing as well. So it's a little self-serving, I'll admit.
That's okay. Maximize your resources. I'm with you.
All right, man. Well, look, dude, I'm really, really looking forward to this. And if you don't mind, I'm going to launch right into some of the hardest questions you're going to face in this entire podcast. Are you ready for that?
Let's go. Absolutely.
Tell me, as we get started, what are 5 things that the listener should know about you?
5 things that listeners should know about me is I'm a genuine heart. Everything I do is meant to serve other people. Sometimes that can be a fault. One thing I'm guilty of is putting myself last and others first and emptying my own cup. The second thing is that someone should know about me is we all deal with challenges. Mine are physically seen. Often others are not. The third thing is that I will fight for someone and something that I believe in until I'm blue in the face. Often I'll give more than they'll give to their own mission. The fourth thing is that there's a fire in me that I often struggle to describe. That fire comes from just challenges from birth. God gave me an uphill battle that often people wonder how you face it, and it's minuscule in the grand scheme of what others have faced. And that fire is stronger than ever, and it's manifesting itself in a way that I haven't pictured when I look at my future until today. So I'm excited about that. And then the fifth thing, and probably the most important, is that everything that I'm centered in faith. I'm centered in God and Christ. And my most important role is a father. I love my wife and family more than anything in the world. And everything. They're my why. They're why I get up every day. That why has changed tremendously over the last 10 years. Obviously, it should and does for most people. But all of that together is really the mission as to why I'm here. And I want to make an impact on the world in a bigger way, and utilize the gifts and things that I've faced to help others grow and understand that they can get through whatever it is they're facing, both short term and long term.
Wow, dude, that is absolutely fantastic. Well said and truly admirable. Well, I'm going to go back just a little bit. And, people who tune into the Normal 40 podcast kind of know what they're going to get. They're going to get a couple people just sharing a journey, sharing a story, sharing experiences. And just for the listener to know, Brandon and I do not know one another. He's not a client. We don't hang out. He's just a dude who's on a journey, and we're similarly wired in some ways, and we're connected through just how I connect with so many people and how we connect with one another on LinkedIn, just by finding something that's interesting and then showing up curious. I mean, that is the central point of Normal 40. And so I don't know how you came to Normal 40, and maybe that's a story you want to tell, and maybe you don't. But I know this, that on November 5th of 2024, you had signed up for a Ramble. You probably signed up weeks before that. You put in your time, you waited, and I hit join meeting, and boom, on my screen is this dude. I didn't know your background. I didn't know your story. I didn't know anything. I didn't know anything about you. I didn't know how you found me. I just knew that we were going to have a great conversation, because everybody who finds me is a really decent human being. And I've come to see that again and again and again. And so we had this classic Ramble. And we talked about a whole bunch of things. And I learned in a 35-minute conversation, it wasn't even a long conversation, I learned a lot about you. And at the end of that conversation, Brandon, I said, hey, look, would you ever just want to be on a podcast? I think your story's fascinating, and I'd love to continue to learn about you on a podcast. And you said, you know what? I've been wanting to do a podcast for a good chunk of my life, and this seems like a perfect time to do it. So let's do it. So from that day to this, 2 months plus, more than 2 months later, we're showing up for this Ramble just to see where it goes.
Yeah. It's such how I found you first and foremost is through LinkedIn. I've found that in my career, I'm always looking to learn. I'm always seeking ways to get better, both personally and professionally. And how I found you through LinkedIn, I don't know exactly how, but I know once I started to explore your content a little more, it started to clarify something that had been burning inside of me. And that was, and is, that you start to have success in your career. And if you would have asked me 10 years ago, what do you want? And I've given you a list of a good financial future, a strong and sturdy household for my family, all these faith, all those things, I have them. And I'm at this point where it's like, is this it? Is that all? Like, this can't be the climax of what our lives are supposed to be. And I need to clarify that statement in the sense that that doesn't mean I'm not grateful for what I have. I'm very grateful for what I have. And as I started to explore the Normal 40, I first just kind of started observing content. And I would see the updates over LinkedIn, and one hit me, then another one hit me, and a couple of them really made me think. And it felt as if, holy cow, someone else actually understands what's going on in my mind and soul. I honestly questioned whether it was just me. So this became more of I need to see this content. And then I understood that, there's an opportunity to have a ramble. I don't even know what a ramble is, but I'm a natural talker, so I'm going to ramble. And I bought your book, The Trade, and I started reading The Trade. And as I very quickly realized, holy cow, this is not a fictional story. And there's about 15 things in there that are similar to what I'm either facing or have faced. And it gives me a future glimpse into what I might face going forward. So the opportunity to have a ramble was just a logical next step to take. When we connected, ironically, my daughter was sick. I don't know if you recall that or not, but she happens to be sick again this morning. Yeah.
Lainey hopped on your lap that morning, and I got
Yeah.
to meet her.
So I owe you some grace and thanks for enabling that. But that 35-minute session was really just an opportunity for me to get out what has been in my mind and on my heart. And I know, and I've known since I was 7 or 8 years old, that I've put here for a bigger reason. I'm put here to make an impact. I have cerebral palsy. And if you do some research into cerebral palsy, it suggests that folks with cerebral palsy are put here to make an impact and to help others understand that there's more to life and that there is more in the value that they bring to the equation. But in order to do that, I have to fill my own cup. So I think what gravitated me towards your content is, number one, I'm not alone in this battle. There are millions of people, millions of women and men across the world trying to figure out, how do I maximize the short time that I have on earth? How do I make sure that I'm doing what I should be? And those are questions that we're all exploring. And I've always had this grand vision of utilizing my story and my overcome and perseverance with cerebral palsy on this big stage and motivationally speaking. And maybe that becomes a one-on-one conversation with someone at a coffee shop versus a 5,000 person auditorium. But I saw this as an avenue to understand what other people are doing to maximize that. And I need people around me that think that way. And most importantly, people that challenge me to be better. And that's what I've found in the normal 40 population.
We have so much to dig into here, man. I'm gonna just absolutely love this conversation with you. And one of the criteria that we talked about in November, I said we're going to show up curious, and I've
Yeah.
got two rules. One is there's no pre-questions. We're just going to show up curious. And the second is, can I really ask you anything? And you said, yeah, absolutely. And
Yeah.
I intend to do that. And part of it, admittedly, is of course curiosity, which is good. And part of it, unfortunately, is just sheer ignorance. My lack of
Yeah.
understanding some things. And so I hope you give me some grace in which of those it is, because some of it is an element of each. But before I get there, I want you to, if you don't mind, tell me, take us back to your third grade. What was going on in your life in third grade?
Third grade, it's really interesting you bring that year up. I remember it vividly because it was a year in which I had the most impactful teacher that I've ever had in my life. Her name is Linda Lurk. She is now retired. Um, but I grew up in a small town, southeast Missouri, a population of 400 people, went to a private Catholic school. And I think, I can't verify this for sure, but if not the first, one of the first students to enter that school with a disability. And at the time, I was going through routine surgeries because I was growing quicker than my body was ready for. And when you have cerebral palsy, it affects your left or your right side. For me, it affects my right side. And I was having consistent surgeries on my legs and stretching and lengthening of the muscles because they couldn't stretch the way they normally intend to because of the effect that CP has on the brain. And in that year, I don't know how many surgeries I had. I think there were a couple. What I remember, though, is the amount of homework that we had in that school year. And there was a ton. And the curriculum there was not easy. They had to make adaptations to my desk. I remember my dad having the desk in his shop and building a platform that I could put my feet on because my feet couldn't reach the floor, and then putting additional support behind the desk so that I could sit up straighter to maintain better posture. And then I remember having surgery and being out and doing homework while I was out. I specifically remember some of the pain, so physical pain associated with those surgeries, and going and getting your muscles lengthened and then telling him 2 days later to get up and walk. And the feeling of getting up and walking, I can literally feel it as I speak. Just this anguish of pain shooting through your body like a sharp knife kind of stabbing you. But this just drive of you have to do this to keep your body moving and mobile. And what I remember from a support perspective is a small community. This is well before the internet, well before GoFundMe, well before meal trains, anything like that. And I remember people just doing anything and everything to help. I remember walking into school and feeling like I'm going to fall on these tile floors and these concrete hallways and it's going to hurt. And that did happen. I mean, it probably happened dozens of times, but being right there to be picked up. And I have an identical twin brother who that dude to this day would change spots with me in a given second. And one thing I remember about third grade is I had gotten out of one of those surgery periods and they went and cut the cast off and I was trying to play sports and I was playing sports. And there was one person who wasn't overly friendly to me. And I remember specifically my brother getting in a fight with that kid on the playground. And I just remember, man, how good it felt to have him stand up for me. Two sides, one being I was hoping I didn't have to have someone stand up for me, but then the other side, knowing that I have someone, and the dynamic that created across our class was outstanding. He got detention for it, of course, but man, third grade was a year of growth. It was a year of challenge. I remember it being challenging from an academic perspective. I remember it being challenging physically and mentally, but I remember as I left it thinking, man, we accomplished a lot. The last thing I'll say about third grade is I was obsessed with sportscasting at the time, and I was going to be a sportscaster when I grew up. So one of my favorite things about third grade was being able to go to the teacher's lounge and grab the sports section of the St. Louis Post-Dispatch and read it front to back about what was going on with the Cardinals or the Blues at the time. And I was mobile and active and played sports, but I was obsessed with professional sports. And I knew stats front and back, even at the age of 8 or 9 years old, because there were times I couldn't move well. So that's what I studied. But I remember that really becoming a part of my passion at that age.
When did you know growing up that you were different than other kids? When did that realization set in? Was it third grade or was it earlier than that?
I think it was earlier. Yeah, I mean, I think there's two parts. One is physically different. I think I knew that immediately. I think what it forces when you go through my earliest memory of CP or anything really is 4 or 5 years old. I just feeling this like heavy weight, which was a physical leg brace on both legs. And just knowing, okay, this is not what most folks face. So that was probably like 4 or 5 years old, something like that. And then from a mental perspective, this forced maturity to happen quicker than it probably should have. And I think that was probably 7, 8 years old, like second grade, something like that. Knowing that, okay, I have to do things a little different. If I'm walking down a path, we spent time in the outdoors a lot. My parents took us hunting and fishing, and I can remember them just taking off in the woods. And I remember me thinking, okay, I have to measure every step and make sure that I'm smart about the path I take. So it created efficiency from a mental perspective, I think earlier on than most folks would even have to think about.
Hey, everyone. Thanks for listening to Normal 40, the podcast. I just wanted to let you know that one of the questions I get asked all the time is, okay, what's next? I'm here, I'm listening. Your content is good. The podcasts are great, but what can I really do? And I tell people, I've created a community for you and I don't advertise it very much, but I'm going to advertise it here. The community is called The Insider. If you go to my website, normal40.com, click on communities, The Insider is $25 a month, and you can cancel after the first month or after the first year or after the first decade. It's a month-to-month conversation. And every day I'm in there and we're communicating in a forum. And every other Thursday, we have office hours where I'm in there and the whole community shows up and we support one another through their journey. I want you to check it out. If you use code Insider Access, the first month is on me. Go to normal40.com, check out the Insider, and I'm going to see all of you on the inside. All right. I'll get you back to the podcast. Thanks for being here. I'll see all of you on the next page. What are some things that we need to know? I mean, this is where my ignorance comes in.
Sure.
I'm familiar with what CP is, but I don't know what it is at the same time. I mean, I think this is, I mean, shame on me, but I mean, I think this has to be said. I can identify it when I see it, but I don't know what it is when you live it. Help me understand, help all of us kind of understand what it does in the body and then how you live with it for the rest of your life.
Yeah. Number one, thanks for asking. I can't tell you how many times I wish people would just ask the question instead of look at you and just make an assessment. It's okay to be curious. It's okay to ask, which becomes an avenue for learning. To be completely transparent, I should preface this. I'm not a medical expert on CP either. Having gone through enough of it, I kind of decided I've learned enough going through my physical experience. I don't need to know the Webster or the Wikipedia version of the definition. But I'll tell you what I do know and how it's impacted is that it affects one side or the other of your body. I can physically feel it. And what it does is it limits the communication of your nervous system back to your brain. And I'll tell you, my case is extremely mild compared to most. It's actually extremely mild compared to what was prognosticated. I mentioned having a twin. My CP originates from being born 3 months premature. At 27 weeks, I was 2 pounds, 2 ounces, my brother, 2 pounds, 6 ounces. And we were told, our parents were told they will not make it. They were going to be stillborn. And if they come out, they're not going to be crying and they need to prepare to tell us goodbye. And then at the time, November of 1985, they didn't know what I had. They knew something was wrong. They could tell in ultrasounds, but they didn't know what it was. And then we come out crying and defying those odds. And then even when that happened, it was very grim. I was in I call it the incubator, but the egg wasn't quite ready to hatch yet. So I was in the hospital for 3 months. My brother, a month and a half, just trying to get up to size before we could come home. And then when we got home, man, it was, this was new, right? Especially, and God bless my parents for just diving in. And it's my parents that gave me the fire and just said, you are going to figure this out. We are going to figure this out together. And I was told early on that I will not walk. I won't live on my own. Be prepared to, be in a wheelchair, all these different things. And my parents didn't take that for an answer. I mean, they have one son, my brother Houston, who wasn't affected by this, thank God. And it's lack of oxygen, what I've learned, that causes things like cerebral palsy. And most folks that have it are in a wheelchair, are very confined, very limited. And they can live long-term lives, but you learn to adapt with the quality of it. I walked when I was 3 years old. Most kids walk by the time they're 1 or around that. And when I did, it was not sturdy. It was, I had leg braces on each leg. One ran from the knee to where your toes meet your foot on the right side, and then a full leg brace. And there was a point early on, I had so many surgeries. I think I've had 24 in my life. I don't know exactly, but the old song head, shoulders, knees, and toes. I've had surgeries on basically everything except for my shoulders and toes. Um, and but man, what the miracle of doctors, the miracle of medicine and understanding that we can figure this out to maximize the livelihood. There is no short-term life expectancy that I'm aware of for anything related to cerebral palsy. The primary effects are on my motor skills. So things like if I go finger to finger to finger to finger on my left side, it's very easy. I go finger to finger to finger to finger on my right side. That looked fairly easy, but that took years and years and years of occupational and physical therapy. We were going to therapy 5 days a week for the first few years of our life. I was, followed by consistent therapy through elementary, middle school. And then, of course, as you get into puberty and teenage years, you become this macho thing and you're like, I'm not worried about that. I'm just going to go chase girls and do all the stuff that everybody else does. And that's always been my mentality is I'm just going to go maximize this life that I've been given. And I wore orthotics, which are leg braces, to help maximize and ensure my gait, because all this can affect your spine and your balance and just your posture and your body, which can have ill effects on other parts of the body. The biggest effect physically is on my leg, my arm and leg on my right side. So what happens is when you walk, your body naturally knows to go heel to toe, and those muscles expand and contract. My body knows to go forward with the foot, but doesn't know to pull it back. Right. So I have to constantly, and I don't, admission of guilt here, I don't stretch nearly as often as I should. As I age, I'm starting to learn the ill effects of not doing that. But I'll tell you, that comes from 24 surgeries and all the pain and all that came with it. There comes a point where you're kind of tired of it. And you learn to accept what you have. And one of my favorite stories about having cerebral palsy and all the challenges and surgery, one of the best things that came from it was I wore these orthotics and I had these surgeries as a result of it. So it often resulted in doctor's visits. And I was 13 years old and I was wearing this big leg brace. And I thought it was so cool because the guy that built my orthotics was the doctor for the St. Louis Blues, right? So that was going to be my connection into broadcasting. And I went in there and he had all the pictures of the players and the sticks and all these things. So I was kind of in awe. And he said, the reason I went there was because I was breaking his braces because I was playing sports and doing all these things that I wasn't supposed to do. I was supposed to be able to do it. I was playing baseball. I was playing gym hockey. I was hunting. I was doing all these things. And I was breaking these orthotics and they're expensive. So this guy said, come to me, I'll fix it. So we came to him and we had a meeting and he built the orthotic and it's this big old plastic robot thing with steel hinges. And it's like, you're good to go out, do your thing. So we're playing, I think it was football. I can't remember exactly, but I was running and I felt this sharp pain cut into the side of my ankle. And I looked down and the hinge shattered on this brace. And I thought this was the coolest thing ever because I was like, oh my gosh, I think I'm the first person ever to break this guy's brace. So we scheduled the appointment. We go up there and it's my mother and I. And we walk in and his name was Terry. I won't share his last name, but Terry, I said, Terry, I broke your brace, and I handed it to him. And I thought he would have this feeling of jubilation and excitement for my activity and my ability to live. Instead, I got quite the adverse reaction. And I saw this disdain and frustration come across his face like a ball of fire. And it was like, he was mad. He started yelling and it's like, I can't believe you did this. And I was in shock. I was like, what is going on? And it was that moment, Lon, that I literally grabbed it I threw it down on the ground. I said, I'm never wearing your orthotic again. And that was the last day that I wore an orthotic in my life. And it was at that point, as a 13 or 14-year-old boy, that I decided that I'm going to be perfectly fine walking with a limp. I'm going to be perfectly fine with the physical appearance that I have. And I'm going to help others understand that it's perfectly fine that I have that, and others have those as well. Um, oh man, as I bring that up, that creates this like lots of emotion. But I felt free for the first time. I mean, it was like somebody took 10 pounds off me. I honestly felt like I could run a 40-yard dash in like 5 seconds. And here I am trying to catch a deep ball on a playground. And I'm no faster than anybody else because my leg's like a scrunched up rubber band as tight as it can be, and it needs to just be freed up. But I didn't care. I mean, that's the first time I was wearing a shoe without having to rip the insole out of it so the brace could fit. Without having to buy an extra wide shoe when my other foot's a normal size. It's things like that you go through, you don't even know you're going through them because it's just normal, right? Quote unquote. I mean, I'm on a soapbox here. I've gotten away from the education of CP, but how do you live with it? I think it wires you to think differently. It wires you to understand how to maximize what you have, how to make adaptations, how to figure out to get the most out of your life and every day. I've made a lot of adaptations. I type with one hand. I've typed with one hand since I was 15. I had a teacher that actually, it was her idea. And within 3 weeks, I was typing with one hand as fast as most do with two. It's just as simply, you have strengths in all your areas. How do you maximize those strengths? And she saw it in me to do that. And I'm forever grateful for that.
Thanks for all of that, man. What an incredible journey, but how helpful to all of us just to understand a little bit more about CP. So thank you for that. Let's jump ahead. Let's jump ahead into high school and going into college. Kind of, where did you think, as you're rounding out high school, and after high school, what were you thinking? We already know that you wanted to be a sports broadcaster at a younger age. You can tell us if we ever get there or not, but tell us what happened after high school.
So after high school, I went to college. High school was a pivotal time because I was told not to play sports, so I didn't, because of some spine issues potentially and all this different things. But I was fortunate to be a manager on the football team in high school. And that was really a pivotal point because I started working with kids that were older than me, started watching out for me. I remember being picked on by a freshman, and a couple of seniors took care of it, and that was that. And then that was my first really, like, I played a big role in the team. I mean, I remember being a junior, and I was the one giving the pregame speeches to the players, getting them pumped up. And I still dealt with stress fractures and all these different things related to CP. One of them, because I was running along the sidelines with the running back as he was going in for a touchdown, and I stepped on a drain, and down we went. You can see it on the video. But going into college was really an interesting time. I knew I wanted to be a sportscaster since I was like 6. And I did okay in high school, but I was more worried about grades and fun and all the stuff that comes with that. And when I got into college, I actually did much better academically because I cared about what I was doing. And I went to a junior college local to home for 2 years, got an associate degree in communications. And then I transferred to Southeast Missouri State University, which is in Cape Girardeau, about an hour from home. And I lived with a couple buddies. My intention was to go to the University of Missouri, which was number 3 at the time in the journalism I was going to be the next Joe Buck. And I got up there, and to be completely honest, I was so overwhelmed at the size of the campus and the amount of people. And it just, I told myself that's where I was going, but I knew in my heart that it wasn't quite right. And then my mother actually said, "Why don't you go look at SEMO?" And when I did, a couple of the buddies I went to high school with had a house down there. So that made that a natural transition. And when I went down there, that was really my first truly independent, like you're on your own life event, which was a big deal, right? Rewind back to you'll never live on your own and all this stuff. And I remember when I was leaving, physically driving away, and both my parents and I, in this just challenge of the breakdown of I'm going off on my own, right? And that was a tough moment, but an awesome moment of growth. And I'm having that support system of my roommates was very helpful. So going to college, I went to class. I was faithful. I'm broadcasting. For some reason, they had all the classes at like 8 a.m. Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, which doesn't align real well with somebody that wants to have fun in college. But I managed to do it, and I learned a ton. I learned a ton about myself physically. I learned a ton about myself mentally. I started working out for the first time. I had this freedom of like, you can become whatever you want to become. And I did well in college. Academically, I didn't need, extra services or support or anything like that because I cared about what I was doing. I was passionate about it. I graduated with a bachelor's degree in communications in 2009 and a minor in I think it's business. I have to look, but I knew that if the broadcasting thing didn't work, I probably needed a backup plan, and I could talk to people. So I thought I'd go do sales, right? And so that's why I got the minor that I got. And man, college was fun. I started to establish this passion for live music and all these things, and started doing some singing and all this crazy stuff. And we had a great time.
Well, I want to go back and you are a dad now, and you've got a couple kids of your own. And I want to go back and see if you can articulate for me now, knowing what you know now, what your parents might have been feeling the day they saw those taillights drive off towards college after 18 years of, you told every bit of your story through your lens. But there was a different lens, the lens of a parent, a lens you know now that you didn't know then, what that experience is like. What do you think what was the range of emotions they were feeling as you were driving away to college?
I mean, I think that they would say, I can't speak for them, but I would imagine a great sense of pride, a sense of relief, probably some sadness, probably some, man, it's such a good question. I always needed them, right? I can imagine if I'm leaving the nest, so to speak, that there'd be this sadness of, does he need me anymore? Right. And even more today, now I'm in Colorado, they're in Missouri, and I wonder if that still exists. Um, but man, I would just think this overwhelming sense of what an achievement, what a journey, and I would think proud and pride in the sense, I mean, as a parent, my goal is to create people and shape people that serve God and have a better life than I do. Um, and I can say with certainty that they gave everything to me and my two brothers to make that happen. Um, and they did it in a framework that they didn't treat anyone any different. And I would think when you come to that moment of culmination where those taillights are going up the driveway, just this, I would imagine that was an emotional event that I probably don't even understand the magnitude of. I know it was for me. I can remember driving down the road, having to pull over because I was crying so hard. And at the time, it was sadness. Looking back now, it's more of a of gratitude and excitement. Um, and I would think that they probably felt some of that too.
Hey everyone, thanks for tuning into the Normal 40 podcast. My name is Lon Stroshine, founder of the Normal 40, and I'm super glad you're here. Hey, really quick, by now you know it's my mission to inspire the change in 1,000 lives. And you know that this podcast is just one of the ways I'm doing it. You can also go to my website, normal40.com, and sign up for my free newsletter that comes directly to your inbox. Now, it's not really a newsletter in the sense that you're going to find much news in it. It's just letters from me to you, man, right where you are on your journey. The topics are going to vary from week to week, and I might have a guest article from time to time, but the intent of the Rambler is to meet you right where you're at, and I hope you sign up. You can also sign up for the 14 questions that changed my life. These are questions you can answer for yourself, but these are the questions I wrestled with when I was right where you are. Just a couple other things really quick. A few weeks ago, I launched my book called The Trade, and The Trade within minutes was an Amazon #1 bestseller in multiple categories, and it remains there to this day. I would love it if you'd go buy the book, not because you're going to get something out of me when you read it. It's because the book is going to get something out of you when you read it. Lastly, I've got a closed group off LinkedIn that I call the Insider, and this is where I hang out. I hang out a few times a month in cohorts and in one-on-one calls, and you can come in there and you can join the Insider and you can see for yourself that you are not alone. I would love to see you in there. Look, last thing I'll say is if you're here and this podcast is resonating with you and you can feel something burbling up, I want you to know that you are ready. You are here not because an algorithm. You are here because you are ready. And I want to help you see you through to the other side. Everyone, thanks for being here. Check out the other episodes, and I'm going to see you a little further down the road. As you tell that story of you driving away crying, I just can't help but think it's another episode of you breaking another brace.
It is. It is. So yeah, there's been a lot of broken braces, Lon.
So thank you for sharing that, dude. I appreciate it. So let's fast forward through your professional career, and then I want to kind of get to this point where you're at now, and balance out some of our conversation from last time with kind of this thing you're feeling. But take us through kind of your professional journey up until this call that we had in November.
Sure. So the broadcasting thing, I broadcasted up until I was about 25. I was doing local high school games. I had an opportunity. I actually did play-by-play for an NHL game in 2009, the St. Louis Blues against the Blackhawks. So
Dude,
I did
that is
have
awesome. I had no idea.
Yeah.
I had no idea.
It was
really
happenstance.
Awesome.
It was happenstance that it even happened. And so I had that moment, which was unbelievable. And that was at the time when I was just
It's happenstance if you believe in happenstance.
True. Good call.
It's something else if you believe in something else.
Yeah. So I started at about the age of 22, 23, I started to think I either need to go all in on this broadcasting thing and figure it out, or I need to start finding a path to make a living. So I started doing customer service in a call center, and I started looking for sales jobs, and then I started my career selling copiers and software in Southeast Missouri. And you talk about hard but an opportunity to grow. I met so many people and I learned so many things about having quality conversation and establishing genuine relationships. And I excelled in that role because my intention wasn't to sell. It was to help people solve problems and build relationships. Sales came as a byproduct of that. So I quickly figured out, hey, I'm kind of good at this and I enjoy it. So I worked there for 2 years, and I'm good or bad, I've always been someone seeking more. It's just how I'm wired. I think CP creates that. That's part of that fire I mentioned early on. And about 2 years into that, I was looking for a growth opportunity. They didn't have anything in St. Louis, but they offered me an opportunity to go lead a sales team in Colorado. This was in March of 2014. I had been to Colorado one time for a family wedding, knew nothing about it. And I flew out, and fast forward a month later, I'm starting the job. I had no idea, didn't know where I was going to live. I just took a leap of faith and figured it out. Found a place to live, started the role. Um, Worked there for a couple of years, got the team built up to where we had a great year. Walked in April 2nd of 2017, the start of the new fiscal year, and they laid everyone off, regardless of your production level, just based on your title. You all got severance and said, thanks for your contribution. Have a great day. That came out of nowhere. Um, and subsequently, 2 days later, they tried to hire me back. And we should have had conversations about this if you wanted to hire me back. So that was a lesson learned, that if I ever become a leader, or when I become a leader, I'm not going to do that if I can keep from it. So I ended up transitioning into the IT world, sales, which I really enjoy, because that is an area and arena where small and medium businesses really struggle to understand what they need to do. More importantly, why they need to do it, because there's this whole new landscape of security and risk and all those things. So I worked for a managed services provider for the better part of 6+ years, up until October of last year, October 2023, when I got an opportunity to be closer to home, less drive time. It was just something I couldn't pass up, to lead a sales team for an audiovisual company, which is where I reside currently. So I lead a team of 7 account managers. We manage an annual budget about $50 million a year. So it's no small potatoes, and we work with some of the countries and world's largest companies. So this has created another breaking the brace moment, if you will, where I'm working with relationships and accounts that you see their logos all over the place. So it is fulfilling in the sense that we are driving, growth and movement across the world, and technologically we're helping people advance. And I've been in leadership now, quote unquote, by title for 11 years, which is hard to believe. I got into leadership at the age of 28. Somebody saw something in me, and I'm grateful for that. I've always thought I wanted to be the leader. I always thought I wanted to be the CEO. As I get into this phase of my life, I'm not so sure I want to be the CEO anymore. Maybe it's just the CEO of something else. I'm not sure what it is. So right now, today, I lead that sales team. I play a big role in our market here in the Denver region. We serve nationally as well. It comes with challenge. It comes with opportunity. It comes with some heartache every now and then, just like anything we do in life. But I'm trying to use every day as learning opportunity to continue to grow and get better and learn to serve in a more, way that makes a bigger impact.
Well, let's talk about that a little bit. I asked you off the top, what are 5 things we need to know about you? And I think you've demonstrated so many of them. You've got a genuine heart. You talked about the physical challenges that you've had to navigate since you were 26 weeks old. You've got to fight. You fight for what you believe in. That you got a fire that's hard to describe. And you're centered in faith. I mean, those are the 5 things. And if we can balance that with this call that we had in November through now, what do we need to know about what's trying to come out of you? When I think about the people in Normal 40 who find me, and everybody who's listening, every single person, every word of this story comes back to this same kind of element, the same question. And the question isn't, is this it? They already know the answer. They know if they can hear our voice, what they're doing isn't it. It either isn't at all it, or it isn't completely it, but it isn't the end. It isn't all they have. It isn't all they are. It isn't their maximum potential. They know it. They just don't know what to do about it. They have no idea what to do about it. And they've known it for a while, and some have started, some haven't. And they're frustrated and concerned that they'll never muster the courage to get going. So that person and the 5 elements that you just described in you, let us in a little bit deeper on what is this thing that maybe you can and maybe you can't fully articulate, but you've had some time now to think about. What is this thing that you think might be trying to pull you forward, trying to break another brace? What is that thing?
I think it is as I mature through my career, I told somebody the other day, I'm actually closer to retirement than I am to the start of my career, if you go the traditional scale of the American work life. Um, and I think you start to reach this point where you wonder, how do I maximize what's left? And I think that thing is, I don't want to regret at the end of whatever this run becomes that I didn't chase what fuels me every single day, and that being making an impact on those that I encounter. And that, my wife said something to me, and our pastor said it Sunday in his message, that it's often the little moments that make the impact, and those build to the bigger, and that bigger may never be the grand stage, and that's okay. My mission in life for years has been make a positive impact on someone every day. And if I do that, I'm living out what I should be. I think the question is, is the vehicle that I'm utilizing to do that the one in which I should be going down the road? And maybe it is today, but maybe it's not in the future, because every company says we want you to stay there forever. We want this to be a career, quote unquote. The reality is that any job we have is simply a vehicle to help support what's important to us, our family, our health, all those different things. Now, that doesn't mean that those things aren't important. We've got to have them, and we need to make sure that they're fostered, and we're put in those positions for a reason, and we need to maximize them. That thing for me is, I got into leadership because I believe that I've been given a gift to help other people motivate and get to places that they either know they want to get to, they just don't know how, or B, they don't know they have the potential to get there, and I help uncover that. And that's why in my professional career, I got into leadership, and I sacrificed a lot of money because of that. But I know that it's fulfilling other people in other ways. And that's really what's driving this thing. That's the fire, the like, how do I find the next person? How do I, at the gas station pump, when I'm talking to the person next to me, just have the courage to say hi? Just have the courage to be curious about what's up with that person, and how do I help? Is this an opportunity to help them, staring at me in the face, and I don't even walk through the door? And I don't want to have the feeling. I had the feeling when I kind of walked away from broadcasting that I did not walk through the door all the way. I look back now and I understand that that's not true. I didn't walk through the door because at the time God didn't want me to, because if I would have walked through the door, I wouldn't have the wife and kids that I dreamt of and now I have today. It took me a long time to reconcile that. And now it's, how do I make sure that every single day that I'm building towards whatever that thing is that's next, that really does make that tangible impact when I sign my name at the end of every day that says, yes, I gave everything I have today towards my mission to make a positive impact on someone I encountered. That's where I'm at today. It's trying to figure out, God's put me in this place for a reason. I'm grateful for that, and trying to balance that with, is this the right vehicle, but knowing I'm not in control of that. And when that opportunity is in front of me, see it, stop enough to see it, and then maximize it, right? Whether it's a gas station conversation, an intentional ramble, a one-on-one like this, whatever that becomes. I don't know if that got deep enough.
No, it totally did. listeners, thank you so much for tuning in to just part 1 of this podcast with Brandon. I told you at the top that we did kind of something crazy late and last minute while we're preparing this podcast to air. I asked Brandon if we could record a quick conversation with his brother and his dad. And we got his brother out of a track hoe and we got his dad out of a muddy ditch as they're working together so that I could ask him a couple questions. And so while the audio you're going to hear here is just that, it's raw and pure and real, and it's proof that there's no rehearsal. It's just showing up curious and asking questions of what it felt like from their chair. So I'm going to go ahead and play that now. And this is going to bring us to the end of this podcast, but it's going to take us right into episode 2. That's going to air in the next week or two. So I hope you stick around for that. In the meantime, as this plays out, thanks for being here. Thanks for being on the Normal 40 Highway. And if you hear some guitar that sounds a little flat, or a voice that certainly sounds a little flat, that might be me playing a little music as we head out into the end of the episode, because Brandon and I got together and we played a little guitar. All right. Thanks for being here. Thanks for being part of my story. Thanks for making yours a little bit better. And I'm going to see all of you on the next page.
Switch the breaker hammer over from a bucket for Dad for tomorrow.
Hey, I got a question for you.
Okay.
I'm on a Zoom meeting playing guitar with Lon. And I'm on a Zoom meeting playing guitar with Lon.
Oh, that's cool.
And the podcast we did is going to release sometime in the next 10 days.
Yeah.
And Lon and I were sitting here trying to collaborate and play guitars for a segment in the podcast, and he asked me if you'd be able to talk to him for a few minutes.
Oh, yeah, I can. Does he need to now, or do you want me to call him back?
He wants to do it tonight, if that works for you.
Well, can I get this done and then call him, or call you back to call him?
Does that work for you, Lon?
It works. I really just want to ask one question, and but we can do it however it works, man. Houston, sorry to be such a knucklehead, but I really kind of like how crazy this is all coming together.
Yeah, I can respect that. Let me close the door on this thing. I'll be able to hear you better, and then I can talk too.
I wonder, Houston. All right, hold on a second. I gotta switch you over to something here. All right. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
All right, Brandon, can you hear Houston?
I can.
Houston, can you hear Brandon?
Yes, sir.
Oh, look at this. This is like fancy pants.
Yeah, high quality stuff.
I'm telling you what, nothing but the best for the Normal 40 podcast. I'll have dads be late for swimming lessons, and I'll have brothers miss deadlines to get some sort of hammer breaker installed. But we're gonna get this podcast done, darn it.
Yeah, that's right.
All right.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I can make a window for you if you guys need it.
No, man. Look, I just wanted to ramble with you for just 5 minutes, but I want you to know that if you're good with it, there's a high likelihood that it's going to make the podcast in some form or fashion.
Yeah, that's fine.
All right.
Did you text Dad already?
Yeah.
Okay. Hey, we got it. It does. Yeah. We got to take 5 minutes here. Brandon's on here. He's got his friend Lon, and I guess they're putting together a podcast, and they want us to talk to them about something here. Come over here for a second. Okay, you got us, guys.
Hey, Rod, my name's Lon. How confused are you right now?
Huh?
I'm just wondering, how confused are you right now about what the heck is going on here?
I'm defused.
You're defused?
Yeah.
All right, well, that's good. That's a good line and a good way to go through life, actually. So go ahead.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I'm curious to know if Brandon told you that he was crazy enough to do a podcast with some dude that he met on the internet.
Did he tell you about that? He told me he was going to have one. Yeah. Yeah.
All right. Well, my name's Lon. I've gotten to know Brandon over the course of the last 5 or 6 months, and we got a podcast about 2 months ago. And what kind of happens when you cut a podcast is you get into it and you do it, and then you go away from it for a little bit, and then you come back to it when it's time to make it into something you want to publish. And
Uh-huh.
and my podcasts are not highly edited. 90+% of the content is just record and post. And so today was that day when I was going to just listen to it and make sure I knew how to do the opening and those types of things. And so I went for a walk and I listened to the podcast, and it was fantastic. I mean, Brandon did, you won't be surprised. I'm not surprised. I'm just kind of in awe of the beauty of the story, how well he tells it, and just kind of how he approaches life and faith and family and friends and all the things that are so important to everyone and everything. And while I was on my walk, I was getting these crazy ideas. And one is, well, I need to talk to Brandon. I've never talked to somebody between when we recorded a podcast and when it posts. It just kind of happens. And I'm like, I'm going to call Brandon and I'm going to see if he'll play some guitar with me, because we talked about guitar and how hard it was to learn to play guitar. And I dabble, and I just discovered that he's better than me. And it's kind of humbling. But so we played a few songs, and I said, I have another idea, but it involves Houston and Rod. And he said, well, I'll call Houston. And I said, great. So here we got him. We got him out of a piece of backhoe and you out of, I don't know what. And there's just a couple of things that I wanted to share with you guys and then ask you guys if you're cool with it.
Okay.
I often go ahead. What questions do you have of me before we start this?
Well, I don't have any, I don't think.
When I started the podcast with Brandon, I asked everybody, all my guests, kind of the same question. And I said, what was going on in your life in third grade? And he shared this incredible story about a teacher, about his journey at that point when it was starting to become more obvious to him of some of the differences and limitations. And he told a couple of stories. And the first one, Houston, is about you and about what you taught him and how you showed up for him in third grade in what was some sort of an altercation with other kids, and that you showed up and you had his back, and that you presented yourself not professionally but sternly in a way that was helpful and loving. And it's a memory that he remembers to this day. And he said, sure, you got detention out of it, but he got a core memory out of it from a brother who would show up and stand up for him. And I wanted you to know it, and you're going to hear it in the podcast. You're going to hear him tell the story. But two, I would love to know that story from your chair as to what was going on and what happened.
That was when Brandon was in the third grade, and I guess kids were picking on him. And you.
Oh yeah, that's funny. I actually just thought about that earlier this week. So what is it you want to know? Basically, my side of the story.
That's exactly right. Tell me the story from your chair.
I don't know. I just remember the kid picking on him. I remember it was after. I can't remember if it was in school recess or if it was after school latchkey, but I don't know. I just remember the kid picking on him, and then I just had enough of it, I guess, and started chasing the kid. And I remember chasing him and him turning back and looking at me. And then truthfully, the memory kind of blacks out. But the next solid memory I have is walking up, or the supervising teacher basically yelling at me, telling me to go straight to the principal's office. And I guess I basically decked the kid and punched him, and he ended up getting a bloody nose through the whole deal. And it was a mess. He was puking up blood, and it was a whole ordeal. But I was actually thinking about that this week, because I don't even know why, but I don't physically or like cognitively remember choosing to punch the kid, and I don't even remember feeling the punch or seeing the punch or any of that. It was literally it's like it's blacked out of my memory, truthfully, from even happening. And everything I remember from is basically what I was told happened. Yeah, I don't even know, because I guess it all happened so fast that I don't know, it's just what I did. And I got detention for a week because of it, so I know it had to have been something worthwhile. But Yeah, I don't know. It was really weird and ironic that you're bringing this up because just a few days ago I was thinking about that, and to this day still can't remember physically deciding, or however you want to say it, actually deciding to punch the guy and then physically punching the guy. It was all just, I don't know if it was instinct or what, primal instincts, I guess.
The thing you'll hear Brandon say in the podcast is, one, his admiration and love for you as a twin brother, but that you're the type of dude who would, in a heartbeat, he told a couple of stories. One is about guitar. That's why we did it. He said, my brother didn't think I would be able to play guitar, so he learned how to play guitar so Brandon could sing. And I'm like, dude, that's a pretty solid dude right there. And then he went on to say that there's nobody in the world who would trade spots with him faster than you would. And and so, dude, I wanted to meet you this way. I didn't realize I was going to be pulling you out of a heavy piece of equipment in the last minute, but I wanted to share it with you. I wanted to hear your side of the story, and thank you for being you, dude. All right. Well, now I've got a question for Rod. So,
Okay.
all right, Rod. So in our podcast, we kind of go through sequentially through Brandon's life, and we talked about the moment he broke these braces that this doctor made specially for him. And he tells this incredible story about him coming back, and he felt proud of the fact that he broke these braces because he was doing stuff he wasn't supposed to do, like being a kid. And when he came back and talked to the doctor, the doctor was not happy. He was somehow made it about him and about, what Brandon should and shouldn't have been doing. And we came up with this concept of, just at different times in Brandon's life, he just breaks braces as the metaphor for kind of the walls he's been breaking down his whole life.
Mm-hmm.
And then we talked about college, and we talked about leaving, and we talked about him driving away from you guys, really for the first time after for his life up to that point, at different times of his life through surgeries and other things, required a lot of care. And now there's this moment when he's driving off, and what you see is taillights as he's driving off. And I asked him, what do you think your parents were thinking? And he had an answer, and I'm pretty sure it's pretty accurate. But he said, I've never asked my parents. So I'm going to ask you, when you can remember Brandon driving off that day, what was going through your mind? What were the emotions you were feeling as he was driving
You mean
away?
when he's driving off to leave for Colorado?
Yes. Or when he was
Yeah.
driving off to leave for college.
That was one of the worst days of my life. I
Say,
cried like a baby.
why is that?
Just didn't want to see him go. I don't know why, but I was proud of him, proud for him. But man, that hurt so bad to see him go off on his own. I guess because all the shit, pardon my language, all the stuff he's been through. Now he's stepping up and kind of more on his own, and really proud of that. But I guess all the stuff that we all as a family had been through, and then, if it's when he went to college or if it's when he drove to Colorado, I was proud of him, but I cried like a baby both times.
Well, you're gonna hear this on the podcast, but he says the same thing. He did the same thing, by the way. Pulled over and cried like a baby for a little bit, and he listed the same emotions, proud and sad, all at the same time. And
Mm-hmm.
I tell you what, there's hurt and power in those emotions, and I really appreciate you sharing that story with me. And Brandon's still on too. He's probably the first time he's heard this. So thank you for sharing that with us, Rod. I think that's fantastic.
Well, I'm happy to share it, and thank you for doing what you're doing. I can't hardly wait to hear the podcast.
It's going to be special, and I've had some special podcasts, and this one's going to be special. I'll just tell you. And Brandon's got some big dreams and big goals, and man, I can't wait to see him just kind of continue to unfold, because I just can't help but think that he's been made ready for whatever he has planned ahead.
I tell you what, he's going to do good. He's going to do good.
Same chords, different order, and we can play some Alan Jackson.
What do you got?
Remember when?